What he does today is outrageous, disgusting.
It is a cruel and arbitrary decision.
We're better than this.
When a child is born, a doctor says, it's a boy or it's a girl. A person's sex is based upon biology, but a person's gender identity, the inner sense of being male, female or both, does not always match the sex assigned at birth. Transgender is not about surgery or structural orientation or even how someone dresses, but it's how he or she feels inside.
Transgender, an umbrella term used to describe people whose true gender identity does not match the sex or gender they were assigned at birth.
Cisgender, a person who identifies with the sex they were assigned at birth. The main problem with stereotyping is that we put people into categories. It is important to remember that not all trans people are the same, just like not all cis people are alike. Since stereotypes put people in boxes, they deny the existence of those who do not fit those assumptions. In fact, every single one of us doesn't fit. The reason is simple: boxes don't mix, but identities do. People in general are just different. People criticize the particular way in which trans women embody their womanhood in appearance and mannerism. They are frequently generalized as being stereotypically feminine or exaggerating feminine characteristics. There are accusations that trans women are responsible for reinforcing stereotypes and that their idea of themselves as women is based on only these stereotypes.
I think a really big misconception is that transition happens overnight. And the reality is that transition is a very long process.
I think the biggest one for me is when I hear a man who wants to be a woman and vice versa. They don't want to be a woman, they don't want to be a man, they are.
I open myself up to people's questions when they are maybe trying to learn about the trans community.
I think coming into it with a curious attitude, I always respect that when people ask me, how do I ask someone if they're trans, or what do I say, what do I not say?
I do have concerns about my safety in our culture, especially now that transgender people are being pushed more into the public eye, faster probably than people have educated themselves about transgender people.
We assume that certain groups, like women, share some outward expressions and values. We then jump to the individual level and assume that every single person at this level also shares exactly those same expressions and values. You are a man, so you should be tough. You're women, so you should be sensitive and caring. While these expressions might be the other way around. A young trans woman may fit the stereotypes of how a man looks, but at the same time doesn't like the stereotypical things that men are supposed to like. She's being forced into a box or struggles to fit in a box that is not meant for her.
As discussed in Chapter 4 of Mrs. May's novel, Intercultural Communication, nonverbal communication indicates all nonverbal, intentional and unintentional stimuli that have the potential to convey a communication message. Nonverbal communication includes the use of visual cues such as body language, distance, and physical environments, appearances of voice and of touch. When discussing the issues faced by transgenders, nonverbal communication is highly mentioned. This is due to the judgmental prejudice surrounding transgenders. Although nonverbal communication is meant as a non-threatening communication tool, sometimes people's facial expressions can come across as judgmental and humiliating. This is because facial expressions convey the emotional state of an individual to observers. When referring to nonverbal communication, Mrs. May's novel also explores proxemics. Proxemics lay the foundation for a field that studies human use of space. It explores the meanings of distances when people communicate with each other, the way their seating is arranged, and the environment in which their communication takes place. Generally, high context-dependent people pay more attention to the hidden message of personal boundaries, and low context dependent people would be less attentive. When discussing transgenders, the questions are raised of does a person stand further away as they are uncomfortable when talking with a transgender, and also whether they feel the urge to meet up with their transgender friend or relative in a hidden setting or if they are comfortable meeting at their local cafe.
All humans are social animals. We are born with a very perceptive mind, ready to join the first cultural group we see after birth. Group attachment is therefore a fundamental concern, and the degree of attachment at the baseline level is a universal level in all human societies. Every single one of us has to attach to one or several groups. Since the collective cultures we receive from these communities are a source of support, identity, and advancement. But not every single one of us is supported or respected in this world. Think about transgenders and what they have to face to get into a group that fits them, where they are respected and well treated. It's not easy for them to live in a world where they are not respected because of their culture, or just because of the fact that they're different. Because they're not. They just don't feel like they belong in the body that they were born with. Sex is fundamentally different from gender. While sex, there you have male or female, refers to biological makeup such as chromosomes, reproductive organs, and hormones. Then you have gender. There you have masculinity and femininity. It refers to two sets of behaviors. The first one are traits that are associated with femininity, such as modesty and caring. The second one are traits that are associated with masculinity, such as competitive and assertive. An issue relating to these terms is a subconscious bias that the association with sex may evoke. While women can be masculine and men can be feminine, women may feel pressured to act feminine and men to be masculine. The traits are unisex, but the names signal otherwise. If a trait can exist in both men and women, it is neither masculine nor feminine, but a sexless trait. This branding problem has not yet been solved, since no terms have been created to address the traits properly.
In South America, transgender people are often denied access to basic rights, including the right to health, education, justice, and social welfare. Transgender people are also more vulnerable to violence, including physical and sexual violence. In Argentina, the law is the only one of its kind in the world, the first to allow transgender people to change their gender on their birth certificates and identity documents without first having to undergo psychological or medical tests. The law also makes access to hormone treatment and surgery a legal right and guarantees the availability of these procedures cost-free in the public and private health systems. There are still major obstacles in Latin America. Since 2008, the number of transgender people in the region has increased by nearly 50%.
Referring to the beginning of this video, President Donald Trump has announced on Twitter that transgender citizens will not be allowed to serve in the US military, saying that the armed forces cannot be burdened with tremendous medical costs and disruption of transgender people.
According to Transgender Europe, there are still 34 countries in Europe who still do not allow a trans person to change their name and register a gender without surgery or some sort of medical procedure. The orange-colored countries represent the countries that require sterilization for legal gender recognition. The blue-colored countries represent the countries in which there is no sterilization required. The brown countries do not offer any reliable procedures. In April 2017, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that requiring sterilization for legal gender recognition violates the human rights.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender citizens have limited or highly restrictive rights in parts of the Middle East. In Iran, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and Yemen, the laws state that if a person is found of engaging in some gender sexual behavior, the death penalty will be applied. Israel is an exception. Israel is being more progressive concerning LGBT rights. Israel is also having a wide support for same-sex marriage. And Israel also allows transgender individuals to legally change their gender without surgery. Furthermore, transgender individuals can serve openly in the Israel Defense Forces.
The solutions include organisations are generating emotional support through increasing the amount of support groups in local areas. There are also welfare organisations which provide encouragement and someone to talk to.
Educating citizens on transgenders and informing them on the issues that transgenders face, and passing and enforcing new laws and policies.
Luckily, there are already a few programs that are being created for the LGBT community, such as events that bring transgender people together.